Here we have another post from Religious Trauma. Coming to terms with my trauma years later. This was just 3 months ago, but the user is now deleted. Trigger warning. I feel like I was on autopilot for the last decade. Dissociation, depression, pure self-hatred, and never feeling a positive emotion toward myself. I tried to escape it a lot and didn't have the self-awareness to see how my own trauma and hurt was causing me to hurt others. When I look back now, it seems like things should have been more obvious to me a decade ago. I guess I just wanted to sort of share my story, I don't know. I'm a 30-year-old trans woman who has been out of the church since age 21 and out as trans since 25. I was born in Florida. My earliest memory is being in a daycare at the Church of Christ that my family attended. Church was my life and my family's entire identity until I was 18. It's still my family's identity, spoiler alert. Here are just some of my memories and experiences from my entire childhood, of which I remember only blips because, unbeknownst to me at the time, I disassociated to try to escape the crushing despair I held deep inside but didn't understand. My gender dysphoria was a secret even to myself. I constantly felt like something was wrong and had recurring thoughts that I should have been born a girl, and even expressed that to my parents once, who vehemently rejected that. I tried harder to live the way they wanted me to. We eventually went Southern Baptist, and anyway, here's some of my experiences. Being spanked and hit with a belt by my dad after my mom would get upset with me and make me sit in the corner until dad got home to deal with me. Having to put a bar of soap in my mouth countless times after talking back or saying a curse word. Having to spend my summers at VBS every single Sunday at church morning and evening, every Wednesday at church, every Thursday going to a family Bible study. I went to a Christian elementary and middle school, my parents being so involved in every aspect of my life, like being the marching band parent president, that I never felt I had a safe place to express myself or explore my identity without them knowing. Overbearing control over my life, especially until I turned 16, not allowed to listen to any non-Christian music and having to run new music by my parents before downloading it to my iPod Shuffle, not allowed to watch R movies or play M games until I turned 18, fair enough I guess, but still. In high school, I bought into it because I was so conditioned and brainwashed to prioritize what my parents wanted for my life, so I played drums in the church band and led youth group worship. Always praised only when I complied with my parents' idea of a good Christian boy. And I was the dumbass going to choir every Wednesday night with my dad. Anyway, after I stopped going to church at 21, I naively thought, cool, that's it, all done, without realizing just how deep these scars go. I was raised to believe it. From the moment of my birth, I was carefully conditioned to follow the path that my parents set forth for me, so much so that my own agency and ability to think for myself and discern what I want was non-existent as a child. Now as an adult, I feel that I have zero personality and zero sense of self because I never even learned how to do that. My entire identity was rooted in God and religion, and I had no room for myself. And now I have the most insane shame complex that leaves me feeling guilty and literally sick to my stomach when I do anything to prioritize myself, especially as a trans person. Like, holy shit, it is so hard to explain the Gordian knot of thoughts that are constantly flying through my brain. Shame and guilt for wanting to transition, and more shame and guilt when I keep myself from taking steps to be happier in my own skin. Talk about damned if I do, damned if I don't. My sense of self is so negative, and I still find myself prioritizing my parents' comfort about my life and identity. My parents obviously didn't take it well when I came out as trans, but that's a whole other story not related to religious trauma. They rejected me and refused to call me my chosen name and pronouns. They even dead-named me in my grandpa's obituary last month. I haven't spoken to them in 1.5 years since I came out, and there was a whole debacle until the email about my last surviving grandparent passing away. I'm no contact with them now, but I still feel overwhelming guilt and shame every single day and think about them constantly. And why wouldn't I? I was raised to believe they were the ultimate power in my life and that I had to do what they wanted because they knew best. I feel like such a hollow shell, like a completely broken person. To be essentially raised in a cult from birth and then to spend the next decade in a state of depression and complete disconnect from my life led to a lot of heartbreak. I've almost taken my own life more than once. I guess I just wanted to share some of my experiences as a trans person with severe religious trauma. I try to be gentle with myself, but the truth is that even a decade later, the claws are still dug into my core psyche. My core identity from birth was tied up in Christianity, and I feel like a fool for not recognizing the depths of how it has shaped and affected me. I wish I had known what I know now at 30 when I was 21 and first stopped attending church, and maybe I could have saved myself a decade of pain and suffering. My point is that this shit is no joke, and I have been diagnosed with CPTSD related to religious trauma. It is a war every single day to view myself positively and not be transphobic to myself. I have to actively work on my self-image and be gentle with myself. I feel like a fragile paper ghost of a person sometimes. I don't really know what I wanted to convey with all this other than to say to my fellow queer and trans RTS havers, be kind to yourself, and don't let anyone tell you this shit isn't real. My parents tried to tell me I had a great childhood and told me that Christianity is a positive thing, that I'm blowing it out of proportion. Respectfully, that is bullshit! I find myself in a unique position in my personal life because my family is still very religious and doesn't understand my gender identity, but then my fellow trans friends have all never been to church and don't have this same experience. It can feel isolating because I meet a lot of trans and queer people who never had the misfortune of being raised this way, and so sometimes I feel misunderstood. I know others exist, I guess just in my own life. I don't know anyone else with this level of religious conditioning, and I feel jealous of that a lot. I also feel jealous of those whose parents accept and respect them. Anyway, I'm done now. Sorry for the ramble. So yeah, that is shockingly similar to my own story. The main difference being that I'm not trans. I could have been. Like, I often wonder what I might have been like if I had not been conditioned to be a certain way from birth. Like they fucking say, like, it's abusive brainwashing from birth. I never got to be myself. I have no self. They said they're a shell. I feel that. That's exactly how I've been describing myself. It's like all the inside parts got scooped out a long time ago, and, you know, not too long ago, even my shell was broken, but I've been putting it back together, and I think it can hold a little bit of water again. But it's insane. The scale of this is insane. People are still downplaying it. People are still pretending. They want to pretend it's not a big deal, that it's like our fault somehow. It's not. It's just abuse. Stupid abusers are having kids and abusing them and not listening to reason no matter where it comes from. It's shocking. It's horrible. This is why we're going to die. If we don't change, we're all going to die because liars just reject the things that are real, the things that make up our world, the things here. They disconnect from that and they throw us all away. I am a 40-something straight woman, but I relate so much to what you've written. I've spent years disassociated and depressed and feeling like I'm never good enough, and it finally just hit me that this probably all stems from years of religious trauma. As a parent to a transgender child, I just want to say to you that I'm sorry your parents weren't accepting and that you haven't had their support. I'm probably not old enough to be your parent, but you've got mom hugs coming your way from me anyway. Thank you very much. Part of what has been so hard for me is seeing how easy it is for all my friends and coworkers to make the switch to use my new name. Zero questions or doubts, just instant respect of my choice to follow my heart. If they can do it, why can't my parents? It's heartening to see others have similar feelings and experiences because sometimes it feels very insular for me. Thank you for sharing this. I have a very similar background, even to growing up in the same state, similar rules, church routine. I went to Christian school from preschool, college even. I'm also in the queer community as WLW. It's taken years already to continue to deconstruct, for lack of better words. At first I didn't even realize there was religious trauma there, but then I realized how isolated my experience was from the majority of the world, even compared to those who grew up in Christian home. Shit was different. I really resonate with the shame and sense of self aspects. Anyways, if you ever want to chat about it, my inbox is open. I just had to comment because you put words to a lot of my existence that 99% of others will never understand, it feels like. I grew up in a cult and it took me a long time to figure out who I am without the total oppressive control of the cult and my parents. Their friends all raised their children with extreme abuse and total control. They were anti-LGBTQ and I left as a teen. It is hard because the queer community is so loving and so beautiful, but not everyone will understand the abuse and control, but more will than in other communities. Many people in the queer and trans community will understand. It just takes time to find your people and for people to open up about religious trauma. It also does get better. So like many others, there will be times when you want to talk about your family and religious trauma and times you don't. I highly recommend a support group and therapy because you need support as well as friendship. You are carrying a lot on your own, but I'm so glad you are free and able to begin to find yourself and love yourself. You deserve this beautiful life. I'm a 32 straight woman of color, and wow, did this resonate with me. I have never struggled with gender identity, but I struggled with shame and guilt over a decade because of multiple sexual assaults as a teenager. I didn't even know it was rape until I was 28. I also tried to end my life because the shame was so much that I didn't want to live. I'm in tears because I feel your pain. Christianity takes everything from us. Trying to figure out who you are as a person without it is extremely difficult because you weren't taught any other way. Childhood indoctrination is abuse. I'm so sorry for the trauma you have experienced and what you're going through now. Just know you aren't alone and remind yourself that you're beautiful and perfect the way you are. Oh, hey, I found my comment. I feel like such a hollow shell, like a completely broken person. I feel like a fragile paper ghost of a person sometimes. I am similar. I was completely broken this year and considered ending myself. My survival instinct didn't want to do it and got me asking questions instead, challenging my longest held assumptions. When I confronted my family, they strung me along for a while. It was agony. They were making it worse instead of better and blaming me as always. Mom blocked me. I unleashed a tirade of text to dad, all caps, calling him out for years of abuse, selfish cowardice, lies, hitting us, all of it. He sent an email saying I'll always be part of his family. I don't think he meant it as a threat. I think he's just very stupid, but the message was clear either way. I blocked him. I made a video on YouTube where I read his email and pointed out that he does not dictate truth. I am not part of his family. His family is there, and I am here. I went to friends for help too, but I'd long since lost the best ones, the second best ones, the third best ones. I was a delusional narcissist myself for decades, and I lost the trust of people who could have helped me if I'd only knew how to let them. But of course I have trust issues. That's what years of abuse can do to a person. It hurt that none of my friends were getting it. Some of them even thought I was being too harsh with my parents. It felt like I had no one, and I broke down. My ex has been letting me stay at his place, though I'm looking for another. We're not very close. Living here was a relief at first, but it is stressful with so many people coming and going, and some of my problems got worse for a bit. I've mostly got a handle on them now, but we agreed it's best if I move on. All that to say, I felt like a broken person earlier this year when I was more alone than I've been in a long time. That hollow shell you speak of, I had to spend months just rebuilding it. Mine had shattered. I'm happy to say I think I was successful, and I might even have started putting things into the shell again. It's hard to say. I don't want to get ahead of myself. What helped me the most when no one else could or would was journaling. I bought a notebook and some pencils from the dollar store and started writing and drawing to express my thoughts and explore questions I had about my own life, questions about my family, my friends. I filled all 5 subjects by August. I explored myself as deeply as I could. I wanted to figure out how I could live with myself regardless of what happened and what is happening, because I will be living with myself, if no one else, for the rest of my life. That process included making flowcharts for my own thought processes, then revising them to be healthier. It involved drafting suicide notes just to see what I would say, how it would make me feel, exploring every possibility. What I soon realized is that I could leave a note or the whole book, they still wouldn't get it. They'd make up some excuse to deny reality like they always do. They'd throw the book away and tell the world God took me home, that I was always a troubled person who never learned to have faith, or some other insulting horse shit. I got to know myself again this year, and I'm much more my own friend than my enemy these days. I still have a lot of bad habits to deprogram and new ones to build up, but I can only take it one day at a time. Understanding cause and effect is most helpful for me, but it's impossible to keep up with everything. I recorded myself reading this very personal notebook cover to cover if you or anyone else would like to see. And final comment on this post, are you me? I'd been considering creating a new main Reddit account since I started sharing my gender identity as transfemme to a few friends, and your story is so close to mine that I decided to go ahead and do that. I also grew up in a Christian cult in the Deep South. I am almost 30, but only fully accepted that I am a woman within the last year. Most of our time in life was planned around serving the church cult. Sunday services, weekday services, revivals, vacation Bible school, workshops, conferences, etc., etc. I went to a private Christian school. I had a constant sense of dread and nameless discomfort. I didn't know how to put it into words. Without realizing it, I just kept busy, diving into sports, academics, hobbies, anything I could escape into. I defaulted into heavily disassociating while keeping a happy-go-lucky mask around anyone publicly, including family. I often described myself as not feeling like a real person. I focused so hard on just being the right person and doing all the right things according to the cult's expectations. I also expressed being a girl when I was little, but it was hand-waved away. I was whipped with belts and branches for minor things, made to bend over, my bedpants down, and was hit harder for moving or crying too loud and told it was love. I thought I was evil, and I so desperately wanted to be a good kid and follow the rules. I couldn't listen to any non-Christian music. Certain shows and games or toys that my friends played with was prohibited as demonic. I played drums in the church band like you, led youth groups too. I was a prime example of what other cult kids were supposed to be like. As soon as I was financially independent, I started deconstructing. That's when I started to have moments of questioning my gender identity. I also went no contact after realizing I was raised in a cult. I also had to learn how to recognize and have my own desires. I've had to discover my sense of self in a way that those who weren't born into cults typically do as children. For the first time, I'm starting to feel like a whole person and also not feel shame for not figuring these things out sooner. I know I'm going to be unpacking these things for many years. It takes a lot just to realize that certain things were in fact traumatic and not normal, and how that affects me as an adult. God, I could fill a book about all the ways those cult tendrils have fucked me up. I let go of the idea that I will have any family who will love who I am and not who I was groomed to be. I let go of the idea that I have any blood family in the sense that most people understand it. I am working on developing normal relationships and taking the wins, like finally imagining myself growing old and being happy. So many people don't understand that transitioning and living authentically like this isn't a choice or simple preference. I feel like an experiment on if a transhuman is still trans, even if you take out the knowledge, language, and exposure of anything outside of heteronormativity and groom them to be the ideal cis person, and the answer is yes, suppressing them just fucks them up. I am 100% certain that if I didn't die prematurely due to some random event, I would have done so at my own hands. I cannot live as a man. I tried. It is so painful, and it was painful before I knew what was happening. I just didn't have the words or support to talk about it. I am so happy that more and more trans youth are being born into affirming families. I'd never experienced relief until I started to transition. The best I could do before was keep busy, but it only got worse over time. And to you, I hope it brings some solace to know that you're not the only one with this very specific experience. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but happy that you've started to discover who you are. Yeah, I think it's important to share these stories. I think too many people are just hand waving away. Too many people want to just dismiss it. But there's a lot of real pain happening out there for no good reason. What's the claim again? Magic Skyman? What? Why are you abusing your own kids and lying about it? What? And you have a club you go to every week, multiple times a week, where you all congratulate each other, pat each other on the back, assure each other that you're going to heaven. You're going to walk on streets of gold because you hit your kids. Thank you for watching. If you have anything you would like me to read, please send it in.